Well, it's a few months since I last spoke with Melanie Veness, the CEO of the Pietermaritzburg Chamber of Business. Those were tough times in July, Mel.
Oh, gosh, I don't care to revisit them. Thank you. Yes, they were awful. Absolutely awful.
But you are having to revisit them at the moment, though, with
Just recently
the
I did,
commission.
actually. Yeah.
What is that exactly, this commission that's looking into what happened in July?
Well, I hope that I hope that they'll use the information that they gather to take some action, because I think this collective non-responsibility is totally unacceptable. It wasn't a little economic glitch; it was a total and utter nightmare, and we've got to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And those that were complicit in it, they must face the full might of the law.
Who is putting together this inquiry?
It's a Human Rights Commission.
And do they have jurisdiction or any teeth to force an action or reaction to what happened?
Well, I mean, I think they don't. If there's a case, they don't hesitate to take action in the interests of human rights. That's evident in the action that they took against our municipality regarding our landfill site. They did take that matter to court to ensure that something is done and that there's some sort of compliance. So I've been impressed with the action that they have taken.
Take us through what your contribution was to the inquiry. In other words, what you told them.
Yeah, so I got invited to come and testify, and it was a difficult engagement in the sense that I had to revisit all of that in my mind again, and had to say some things that I'm sure were probably not well received by many people in government services, but it's the truth, and I have a mandate for my members, and I needed to tell that truth. And the truth was that we found ourselves completely and utterly alone at that time. There was very, very little response in the first couple of days from SAPS. Being able to we try to raise people that we work with on a regular basis, couldn't reach people. You've heard subsequently our KZN police commissioner went on paternity leave in the middle of it. We were unable to get help on the ground. So we battled. We battled for a couple of days completely on our own, and that's unacceptable. I see subsequently there was some testimony to say that there wasn't much cooperation from the KZN SAP side when National came down. So, I think there's got to be action taken. It's completely inexcusable that in a crisis like this we find ourselves all alone.
The feedback that the public are being given, or the story the public is being told now, is that the police in KwaZulu-Natal was overstretched and that they need effectively more resources. So give us more money, we'll have more people, and then should this happen again, we'd be able to handle it differently. Do you buy it?
No, maybe SAPs are under-resourced. Maybe it was unusual circumstances, but we didn't even see those that were on the ground responding. I mean, I don't have to defend that position. Everybody watched on TV as SAP stood by and watched people load TVs into the boots of their cars. There were reports from the ground of SAPs saying to people, go ahead and loot. We're not going to do anything. So we were also told by SAPS members that it took everything in them to stand down. They were instructed to stand down. They weren't allowed to respond. And so that instruction had to come from somewhere. And we've got these highly paid intelligence units. Why don't they get to the bottom of it? Who was behind it? I think the businesses and the communities that live in these areas deserve to know the truth. Why was there such poor response? Why were they instructed to stand down? Why did we find ourselves completely alone? Who's actually calling the shots?
And you did mention that that there wasn't that much support for National. What do you mean by that? When police came in from other parts of the country, were they not being supported by the local KwaZulu-Natal police?
Yes, I saw an interview. The former Minister of Defence saying when the army arrived here, they battled to get cooperation and information about what was happening on the ground. I mean, we were crying out for the army to come and help us for days on end, begging for them to come. And when they arrived, you would have thought we would have been waiting with open arms to deploy them to the ground. It took so long to get people on the ground. It was so disturbing. It might have felt longer than it than it was because we were in the midst of it, but it was definitely days, before we saw anything on the ground. And I think at the end of the day, Maritzburg, I think, got 120 soldiers, and they were deployed to protect government infrastructure. It's not as if they were deployed on the ground to help the private sector. Community stood together. Community stood alongside each other and barricaded, the path to their local supermarkets and things. Private security and community did that. SAPS came in a couple of days later. Our municipal security, we started having meetings probably on the third day. But in the beginning, you couldn't raise anybody. And it's not as if we don't speak to people on a regular basis. I mean, I speak to the brigadiers. I know who they are in charge of the various police stations locally, because when we have crime unfolding, we phone them. I have their cell phone numbers. We weren't able to get a response.
When we spoke in the heat of the battle, as it were, in July, you said that the feedback you were getting from business owners who'd had their businesses raised was that they would take the insurance money and not reopen. Have you got an update for us on what's actually happened?
There are a number that haven't, that there's been no movement on. I think they're still waiting for insurance payouts. Some, I understand, like the Edendale Mall, will build a smaller version. Others have mitigated their risks, so they've put in some of the lines of their business and moved other operations elsewhere. Some have rebuilt. Others that will rebuild will look to rebuild elsewhere in town. So I think you'll find that areas like Edendale that were particularly badly affected, those businesses will relocate elsewhere in the city, which means that all those small businesses that relied on the foot traffic from large business in the area will suffer. So I think that's the issue. Some will rebuild, like Brookside Mall. They rebuild the Checkers. They've got a tenant committed to that. But Edendale, it's not going to happen. As you drive past, you can still see a lot of the destruction. It's as it was then.
And what's happened to, or has there been a knock on property prices or rentals in Pietermaritzburg, if presumably some businesses are leaving and won't be going back into business? Has that affected property owners?
It hasn't yet. We haven't seen any massive change to the property market yet. On the commercial side, the commercial agents are saying that that some of their rentals they're stepping back. When they've got to do renewals, they're not getting increases. They're actually stepping back. There's a move for businesses out of the centre of town to the neighbouring suburbs, where I'm assuming that they feel it's safer. Our town centre is abominable. I don't know how we'll ever get that resurrected again. We're going to try to work with the city to do some work in the very centre of town to start seeing whether we can't attract people back there. But I don't think you're going to see the kind of confidence that we really need to see the reinvestment in Pietermaritzburg unless we do what I ask the politicians to do, and that is to stand with me and to say that they think what happened in July is totally and utterly unacceptable, that they welcome any investment in the city that brings jobs and economic growth, and that anybody that was complicit in that must face the full might of the law. To this day, that hasn't happened, and I don't know how you inspire confidence, re-inspire the businesses that were invested here to start off with, give them some sense that if this had happened again, they wouldn't be all alone. And it's also dealing with the trust deficit. There's a massive trust deficit, and understandably so, because we have people on that work in our factories and on our shop floors, and the feedback that's come back is very disturbing. It's things like our politicians, some of them were complicit. So they can't stand up and say that the looting was wrong. That at the time in community, while they were saying one thing to us, they were saying something else to community. So, publicly there needs to be a stand and a statement about this. what do we, as the government of this region, believe about what happened in July? If it ever had to happen again, do we have a suitable response in place? And what would we do to mitigate it? And how does government feel about the investment that currently is in the city? Because some of the stuff that was sprayed all over those walls, it makes people feel like the investment isn't welcome. And that's awful.
What kind of business is, or perhaps differently, what kind of business was attracted by Pietermaritzburg, and what kind of a business will be attracted by it in future?
Well, I think we have a number of advantages as a city in terms of our positioning. So we're right alongside the N3, and we're just outside of the Rust Belt. So a lot of metal engineering takes place here because it's close enough to the port, but not in a space where we have the rust issue. So historically, we've had a lot of metals. We're a large footwear area. That's been reduced somewhat since we opened up in '94. Now competitiveness was a problem, but we still have some good leather and footwear factories. We have, I think we're a capital city, so one of the things that has grown enormously in the last while is the private healthcare sector, which is really interesting. We did some research on why that was the case, and for a number of reasons, we, despite what happened in July, we live in an incredible area with a lovely lifestyle. It's enough city to keep one engaged, but there's a whole lot of country as well, and the people are really wonderful. We're being a capital city, we have above average number of people who are in medical aid, so there's a ready market, a great environment with some of the best schools in the country. I think Pietermaritzburg is really blessed as far as that's concerned, with the number of private schools in close proximity to the city. So we have top-class education, wonderful lifestyle, fabulous weather, good positioning along the N3. It's, apart from what happened in July, is usually relatively safer than most big centres. And it's a wonderful place to raise a family. And if you happen to be in medicine, in private healthcare, then you've got a ready market here, not only in terms of the people that are on medical aid in the area, but we have a large retirement community that lives around the Pietermaritzburg area that requires specialist care. And we serve a massive area into northern KZN, into the Drakensberg, in terms of specialist services. So all our private hospitals expanded. So there's a lot of growth in that space. We had the development of the Pietermaritzburg Eye Hospital. We've had the old Royal Hotel turned into a phenomenal step-down facility. So from a healthcare perspective, that is something that's definitely growing. And retail's grown quite significantly in the last while because of the wide area that we do serve.
So there are clear advantages, but
Yes,
now
absolutely.
you have hanging over your heads, you have the non-reaction or the non-consequences of what happened in July, when you were pretty much the epicenter of the rioting. And if I'm hearing you correctly, until that is addressed, you won't have the confidence or that trust deficit you speak about of other businesses coming to take advantage of those advantages.
Well, absolutely. And that's very difficult for us to stand up there and say, the first question is, what guarantee do we have that what happened in July isn't going to happen again? Well, I can't give you a guarantee at this point in time. We need our leadership to stand up and say, we are ready. If this had to happen again, we would ensure that it would not happen on the scale that it's happened in July, that you will not be alone, that we condemn it, that we stand alongside you, that we welcome any investment in the area that brings jobs. And together, government and the private sector have got to take hands in this space. There's no two ways about it. Otherwise, we just don't get past it.
Melanie, has there been any difference due to the local elections? In other words, the voting in Pietermaritzburg, was that reflective of any consequences from the public, at least, to what happened?
Yes, I think there was a massive reaction from the public. The ANC came in just under 50%, which for this area is absolutely unheard of. So we have the same mayor back again, and probably a more balanced council than we have had in the past in terms of opposition voice. We're, as you know, under administration for the second time in 10 years. We're still under administration, so we just hope that that wake up call at the polls will see everybody pulling together to get our city right. It's unacceptable. People that live here are passionate about our city. We love Pietermaritzburg. We love KwaZulu-Natal. We're proud to be the capital, but a capital shouldn't look like this. A capital should be a reflection of the whole province, and we are going to have to work very hard, and we're going to have to work together if we want to see things change.
And the fact that right on your northern border, you now have the DA's first council that they have a majority in KwaZulu-Natal. Might that also be a wake-up call, perhaps, for politicians who've been asleep at the wheel?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, I really do hope that the politicians take heed of what happened at the polls, and I certainly hope that a new broom makes a difference. Unfortunately, Umgeni is a rather complicated municipality in the sense that rates are paid by ratepayers of Umgeni to Umgeni. So there's an opportunity to fix roads and things which are in a shocking state, but water services are still supplied by Umgungundlovu district municipality, and electricity by Mzanduzi. So I think in terms of an ability to make a massive difference, it's off a very low base, so I don't think it'll be necessarily that hard, but I think we've got to be realistic as well in terms of the fact that Umgeni is a complicated municipality.
And the new mayor is saying that he is going to try to attract businesses to that area, which is Howick, Nottingham Road, Lidgerton, etc., that part of the Midlands. Given that the issues that you're facing in Pietermaritzburg, do you think he'll have much success in doing that?
Well, I mean, I certainly hope that he will, and we'll support him. We are the Pietermaritzburg and Midlands Chamber of Business, and we do want to see the area grow. So I like his energy and his positivity, and he's got a young, vibrant team. So we wish him everything of the best in his endeavours, and absolutely we'll support them. We'll support anybody that is willing to take the gloves off and go out there and win some investment. So yeah, it's going to take that sort of passion and energy. So we wish them every bit of luck, and we'll give them support.